Hello my friends. So today we're just going to be taking a running jump back into the world of my animated film. You may remember from last time I had a go at drawing Gampel-Schteg, which is of course the village that the whole story starts and ends in, and it's the home village of our main character Alvar. So I made a decent start last episode, but it was taking me quite a long time and I certainly had a long way to go. So I thought I would just dedicate today's episode entirely towards this one depiction of this village, and I'm going to make it as good as I possibly can because it's quite important to have like a concrete idea of where everything is in this starting village so that I can kind of shape the story around that, you know? Before I jump into it though, I just wanted to say I have a Patreon now, and on there I've made a tier specifically for funding this whole big mountain idea. It's entirely optional, there's no pressure at all, but I noticed that some people have already chosen to support this film, and so thank you so much for that. I'm really grateful. There's a few small things, like I'm going to be hopefully posting some HD versions of the artwork that I've done in these videos on that Patreon for people who are subscribed to that tier specifically. And of course all of the money from that tier, regardless of how much it is, will be going directly back into this film process. Obviously I'm in the very early stages now, so I think it would probably be going towards stuff like I'd like to get some concept art work done by some like professional artists that I really like. I think that would be really cool. Or just things like it'll help me save up for better equipment, maybe take some like animation classes, I don't know. But yeah, thank you so much. I'm really grateful to the people who have already supported me on there, and I'm really grateful to the people who hopefully choose to support me on there in the future. Anyway, I'm gonna go and do some drawing now. Let's go and draw the village of Gampel-Schteg. I'll explain more about the village and the choices that I've made as I'm doing it. So let's go, baby, woo! Sorry, just wanted to get you a bit more hyped up for the drawing. Okay. So the village of Gampel-Schteg is situated on the side of a small foothill at the base of a giant mountain. Immediately I realised I was working way too small, and that the hill I'd drawn was going to be the smallest and fattest hill ever, so I had to expand my canvas a bit. This was a bit daunting because I was going to have to be even more detailed than before, but it meant that this hill was going to have a shape that I was more happy with. I then just continued drawing from where I left off last time, which was constructing the rows of houses and streets that wind their way down the slope. This was very difficult in terms of perspective. Perspective is not one of my strong points really, and you'll be unsurprised to hear that I had a big headache after drawing all of this. I think my brain is just a bit too small to comprehend all of the angles of all of the different lines, and it didn't make it any easier that the angles of the buildings change as they wrap around the sides of the hill. I think I maybe could have made the buildings a bit denser because there's just a tiny bit too much empty space around them, or maybe I could have filled the gaps with like trees and plants. But I was still enjoying drawing all of these different sorts of buildings. Some of the buildings I tried to make more sort of alpine, you know, they sort of look like ski lodges and stuff. And then I threw in a little small tower and then this big centerpiece church in the middle. I kind of roughly based this church on a few churches I've seen in my recent trips to both Iceland and Switzerland. I don't know what it was about the churches in those two countries, but I thought they were really cute. And then it was all about laying out the lower areas of the hill, where the village kind of begins to thin out a bit, and where it meets this river that kind of winds around the hill's base. I drew a small area of tiered farms more akin to kind of a Japanese style of rice fields, and threw in a couple of Japanese farmhouses as well. This whole thing is a bit of an amalgamation of architectural styles and also just things from fantasy, but I just went with whatever felt right at the time, and I think it works. Then, after I'd mapped out where all the surroundings and forests and things were going to be, it was time to position Alvar's bakery. You might remember in a previous episode of this series I tried to design Alvar's home, and I actually think it ends up fitting quite well at the base of the village here. It's unique enough as a building to be noticeable, but I think its design isn't too far-fetched, and hopefully it just about fits with the surroundings. And the main reason I've positioned his house at the bottom of the hill is that I want him to have to make this whole journey through the entire village to be able to reach the square at the top, as it just presents sort of a natural way to showcase the whole settlement, and I think that's going to help with the world building as well. I added all the little details to the buildings, which took a lot longer than this jump cut would have you believe, but now it was time to start colouring, and I had no idea what I was doing. I decided to settle on 3 main colours for the houses. There was those made of wood, There was those made of sort of a lighter stone, and then there was those made of a cobbled grey stone. I think it is important to have an element of consistency about the village, but I didn't want the whole place to look completely uniform. Another reason for keeping the walls relatively simple is that I wanted the roofs of the houses to stand out. You may have noticed in my videos up until now that I have a tendency to sort of opt for a pink and blue colour scheme in my artwork. It's a combination of colours I really like, and so keeping with that I decided to colour the roofs in the same way. I then went and filled in the river, which water is always tricky to know what to do with really, especially from far away, so I tried to make things a little bit more interesting by adding a few waterfalls and rocks along the river's course. And then this patch of forest to the left of the village is where I've decided to have the Blossom Forest. This is where all of the lotus turtles live, it's where we see a good portion of Alvar's backstory, and it's where he meets Puddle, the little duck character. So it's a pretty important location. In fact, if you look carefully into the far distance there, you might also notice the waterfall area that I've drawn in previous episodes. And there we are, that's the finished piece. This is the village of Gampel-Schteg. I was a bit stumped on how to shade the whole thing, so I only really did minimal shading, and I'm sure that a more skilled artist would be able to make the lighting much more dramatic, but for the most part I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. It certainly helps in terms of mapping out the opening of the film. You know, you can see in this piece the route that Alvar might take up to the town square where the big festival is being held, and you can see where he would start his journey up the mountain as he sets out across this big majestic bridge. And then you can also see how he would access the Blossom Forest where he and his friends used to play as children. So there we go, it's all kind of in front of us here now. There's nothing really more to say about it apart from that, so I suppose let's cut back to me in real life. It's me, I'm back. So there you go. I actually think the drawing went pretty decent this time. That's by far the most time I've ever spent on a drawing, and hopefully you can see that in the results. I don't know. Obviously my perspective drawing still needs some work, and my colouring and my shading also, but I think definitely if you compare it to what I did a year and a half ago, you can see at least that there's been some improvement, which is encouraging because I thought I was getting worse, so so yeah, all in all, a semi-success this episode. Let's go, guys! Thank you very much for watching today's video. As I said, you can go and join the Patreon if you feel so inclined, or you can become a channel member by pressing the join button. Obviously, if you feel inspired in any way to draw a Gampel-Schteg of your own, or anything else from this animated movie series, then you can send it to me on the Discord in the Show Us Your Art section, and you never know, if I really like it, I'll give you a little feature in an upcoming video. This is a big shout out to the Gampel-Schteg Mafia. Keep up the good fight, and I will see you all next time. See you next time, everyone. Goodbye. Bye.